All right, morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Let's wait for some people to get in here. Wherever you're watching, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, thumbs up. Good morning, everybody. See people on YouTube, Facebook coming on in here. X coming on in. Good morning. Morning, Amy on YouTube, Tammy on Facebook. Terry and Leah on Facebook. Hello. Morning, Dave. Morning, everybody. Gareth on X. Good morning, everybody. Welcome on in. I see someone commenting on 6B last night. Yes, we were on, but it was just after the president got done, and by that time it was about probably like 9:30, 9:35 or so. We talked to Brian Glenn quickly, and then we tried to squeeze in a little news and sports. You know, being in the 8 o'clock spot, that's unfortunately what's going to happen between now and the election. We're going to have, excuse me, my eye's itchy. We're going to have nights where we're going to get preempted, as they say, or at least partly preempted or whatever, as we get closer to the election, as President Trump continues to add events. You could see the behind the scenes that happens when we get these messages on the events that are being added, what the calendar ends up looking like. That's why I commented last night, the job that Real America's Voice does on not a lot of notice. It's pretty incredible what goes on, because they just keep adding and throwing events, different things, whether it's Trump or whether it's Vance or whatever it is. So how's everybody doing this morning? Everybody watched President Trump in Indiana, Pennsylvania last night? We were watching it in the studio as we were waiting for it to come on. And I thought it was good. I always think the president's good, but I think there was some different things. Child of the King, good morning. Moon Pie, good morning. Damon, did you see my comment? Which one? I can go back and look, but I didn't see it in front of me, no. Bad Boy channel on YouTube. Yes, I watched it on Rav. Good morning, Damon. You have your coffee. Stephen, yes, I do. It's the Crazy Town medium, and I really like it. I have to say, I also like Tim Hortons a lot. Tim Hortons. But I like ours a lot. Damon, I'm doing great in Western Michigan. It's a little rainy today, but that's okay. Trump's supposed to be here in Warren today. I can't wait to hear his speech. Okay, very good. I can't keep up with where the events are. Is he in Warren? He's in Warren today. Well, he must be talking sometime in the afternoon, because I don't believe that we're getting preempted tonight. Can you please let them know this is important? Okay, what's important? I keep missing it, I guess, because I get all my comments from all 4 social media sites in the same place, so they go very fast. So I haven't been able to see it, but I'll certainly go back and take a look. Whatever you're trying to tell me, I'll figure it out. So yeah, I thought, okay, issue one where? Did you say in Ohio? Is that what you said? Issue 1 in Ohio. This, among many things, is a very good question. But the main question, and we'll get to some of this morning, is how possibly this note gets released. And you have to ask yourself why. Why possibly would this messaging be made public if it wasn't on purpose, for not the best of intentions? Because does it make any sense to anybody? We didn't get this in Nashville, certainly this quickly. We didn't get We didn't get this anywhere else that I can think of. And all of a sudden, here's this nicely written letter that he wrote after he got arrested. Where did he write this? Where did he write this? Who got it? And how did it get out so fast? Did he write it and say, here, put this out? And they just said, oh, okay. You guys were so funny last night. In reference to what, John? I don't remember. I know at the very end I was laughing because Delgado teased some story of some guy stabbing himself to death while trying to separate frozen hamburgers. I don't know. Child of the King says, yes, Big D, he actually wrote several letters, one if he succeeded, the other if he was killed. They only released this one. Oh, so he pre-wrote both scenarios. Is that what you're saying? Well, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out why all of a sudden this one comes out so quick. We've been asking for the Nashville Manifesto for how long? And like everything else, seemingly, they don't really try to hide much anymore, right? I mean, it's just right in your face. They know you're going to know. They just don't care when things like this happen, because why would you make public a letter from a would-be assassin saying, basically to the crew of crazies, hey, sorry guys, did my best. Now I'll leave the job to you. And oh, by the way, I don't have any money for anything else seemingly, but I'll leave a bounty, $150,000 or whatever the hell it was. Does any of that make any sense? Where was that coming from? Has anybody actually seen if he's had this money? Where did he get it from? I mean, the whole thing just stinks to high heaven. The letter being allowed to be get out like that quickly with that kind of messaging. I mean, who are they speaking? Who are they hoping sees that? I did not watch Bongino yesterday, but maybe we could watch a little bit of it here. We could pull it up. Let's go through a couple things here. As we do, we'll take a look at the markets. Dow futures up 93. S&P futures up 9.5. At NASDAQ up 50. Oil at $72.30 a barrel. 10-year Treasury at 3.79. So market looks like it's going to open to the upside, to the green. Crypto, Bitcoin up slightly, 182, 63,550. Really needs to get over 64.2. Really needs to close a daily candle above 64.2 to have some bullish momentum. Ethereum 26.39. Ethereum's having a nice couple days, coming back a little bit today. XRP unchanged, as it seemingly always is, although I don't know if this is right. Maybe this is broken. How can this be unchanged every day? Litecoin 67, Bitcoin Cash up slightly. But markets look like they're going to go green today. Stock futures rise slightly after Dow closes at a fresh record. I think this is probably the most attention-grabbing headline I saw quickly as I looked this morning at headlines, because the vote last week for the rate cut was not unanimous. And now we know who was not the unanimous party, and that was Fed Governor Bowman. Explains her dissent on the rate vote, says she's worried about inflation. Fed Governor Michelle Bowman said Tuesday she thought her colleagues should have taken a more measured approach to last week's half percentage point rate cut. And of course, this is what we talked about, and maybe we're proven wrong and that the half point rate cut will end up being correct. Or we're going to find out that the half point rate cut was done because things were much worse than any of us knew at the time. And the Fed governors and the Fed chair saw the unemployment rate going up fairly quickly and things disintegrating fairly fast. The jumbo cut could be interpreted as a premature declaration of victory on our price stability mandate, she said in remarks to a bankers group in Kentucky. She worries that inflation could reignite. Bowman was the lone dissenter on the half-point rate cut. No governor had dissented from an interest rate decision since 2005. In explaining her rationale, Bowman said the half percentage point or 50 basis point reduction posed a number of risks to the Fed's twin goals of achieving low inflation and full employment. The jumbo cut could be interpreted as a premature declaration of victory. Well, possibly, but it also could be a declaration of, things are about to go south really fast. And unlike what we did in raising rates, where we were way behind and let inflation really burn hot, let's rip the Band-Aid off here and get ahead of what we know is coming. Not going to say anything to the people here, but we see if the unemployment rate is going to go to 5, we better start to think about stimulating the economy. And you have to figure that stimulating the actual economy is coming at some point with QT becomes QE again. And that's the point where really, if you're sitting on the sidelines in the market, in whatever market you trade, the turn from QT to QE is where you want to then put both feet in. But it's not beyond the realm to think inflation could, if you go back in history and look, there have been times after rate cuts that inflation has had a second life. And there's certainly, if you look at the numbers we went over yesterday on this stream in the morning on where we are fiscally, I mean, you could never say inflation is solved. We talked about what happens at the ports in a week. You want to talk about igniting inflation again? If that goes past Sunday night at midnight and you get that kind of a strike, and again, all these things work with a lag, but you talk about inflation coming back strong, that would do it. That would do it. Now, the other thing is, we've talked about this as well, does the Fed eventually decide that 2% is not achievable and they be willing to accept something higher? Of course, they're going to say no, as they have. But maybe where we are now, 2.5, between 2.5 and 2, 2.5, 2.6, 2.4, is where the Fed has to just say, well, that's going to be more of an acceptable rate for them. So worth keeping an eye on. Markets, obviously, though, this morning, right now, still look like they're going to open green. And we'll see if that can last during the day. That's kind of been the thing. Open strong, fade middle of the day, close red. Although that did not happen yesterday, but we'll see. So we'll keep an eye on that. The other thing that's not getting nearly the attention, and of course, this is a hear me now, believe me later moment, as we all talked about this for the last couple years, Kash Patel and others. We continue to get information that shows that President Trump foresaw what was going to happen on January 6th of 2021 and tried to do everything he could to avoid that. And John Solomon has a piece out this morning. Bombshell transcripts. Trump urged use of troops to protect Capitol on January 6th, but was rebuffed. Key lawmaker says interviews prove Pentagon wrongly allowed optics to overwhelm security concerns and lead up to that faithful day. The Pentagon's top brass did not comply with Trump's orders because of political concerns and optics. And the more we learn about this, the more that you're not going to convince me that Nancy Pelosi knew exactly what this could turn into and very much let it happen knowing how it would look for the former president. I don't think there's any doubt about that. When you think about Stephen Sund and what he told John Solomon in that first, really, the preeminent interview with Stephen Sund was done by John Solomon. And then you look at the information we now know. You look at all the lies that we're told that we now know, from the taking over the limo, fighting with Secret Service in the back seat, all that Cassidy Hutchinson nonsense that was all proven to be a lie. We knew at some point what President Trump has said was going to be proven to be the truth, and we continue to get more of that now. Between what Kash Patel told us, between what the president told us, between what others told us, and now we have more information. Then President Donald Trump gave clear instructions to Pentagon brass days before the January 6 riots to, quote, do whatever it takes, end quote, to keep the U.S. Capitol safe, including deploying National Guard or active duty troops. But top officials did not comply. I didn't realize that was a thing when the chief executive gives you a directive. That's interesting. They did not. Who didn't comply? Top officials did not comply because of political concerns. According to transcripts of bombshell interviews conducted by the Defense Department's chief watchdog that shine new light on government dysfunction ahead of the historic tragedy. General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, confirmed to the Pentagon Inspector General 3 years ago that during a January 3rd, 2021 Oval Office meeting, Trump pre-approved the use of National Guard or active duty troops to keep peace in the nation's capital on that day, the day that Congress was to certify the results of the 2020 election. Milley's interviews were among several key transcripts obtained by House Administration Oversight Subcommittee Chairman Barry Loudermilk from Georgia, and he shared them with Just the News. Quote, the president just says, hey, look at this. It's going to be a large amount of protesters coming in here on the 6th, and make sure that you have sufficient National Guard or soldiers to make sure it's a safe event, Milley told the Inspector General in one of two interviews he did in spring 2021 during a probe of the Pentagon's response to January 6th. Now, you think about that quote, and you think about this article, and then you go back and think about all of these wretched, gold-plated, phony, lying Democrats who have gotten on TV, talk shows, every camera they could find, and spout to the American people that this guy incited an insurrection. He was responsible for it. His language was responsible for it. He did nothing to prevent it. He sat over there in the Oval Office. He didn't make a video till how late. Remember CNN and the debate? You waited too long, and even President Trump had to bring the receipts. He took them out of his jacket to go through the timeline. These lying weasels, all of them, Milley most of all, and they were meanwhile, behind the scenes, they were giving interviews like this. Have you heard any one of them ever in 3.5 years say, well, yeah, the president said, hey, look, there's going to be a lot of people here. You do whatever you have to do, have sufficient National Guard or soldiers to make sure it's a safe event? Well, no, you have not. You have not. All you've heard is every propagandist spouting off about how Trump was responsible for this day. He did nothing to prevent it. He didn't make a video. He sat back and watched. Bill Kristol, he sat back and watched it happen. All these people spouting for years. Milley said then Acting Defense Secretary Christopher Miller, himself a former general, assured Trump there was an adequate safety plan for Pentagon assistance to Washington, D.C. Miller responds by saying, hey, we've got a plan and we've got it covered, and that's about it, Milley recalled. Milley confirmed a second time during the interview that Trump was clear in his wishes. Quote, it was just what I described, which was, hey, I don't care if you use Guard or soldiers, active duty soldiers, Do whatever you have to do. Just make sure it's safe, the general told the IG. The transcripts of Milley's April 8th, 2021 and April 16th, 2021 interviews confirm reporting by Just the News 2 years ago that Trump wanted troops to keep this capital city safe. So again, this brings you back to the questions that we've asked now, and we've got little tinges of evidence from her stupid daughter's video. What did Nancy Pelosi know, and when did she know it? What did Mitch McConnell know, and when did he know it? What did both Sergeant of Arms know, and when did they know it? And how is it that the president's wishes were not followed up on, were not communicated on this day? Other transcripts gathered by Loudermilk during his subcommittee's ongoing probe of January 6 security failures show civilian leadership at the Pentagon admittedly openly that they would not comply with Trump's wishes, with some saying they did not like the optics of armed soldiers or guardsmen roaming the Capitol with weapons during what was supposed to be a peaceful transition of power. Oh. Quote, there is absolutely no way I was putting U.S. military forces at the Capitol, period, Miller told the Inspector General during his March 21 interview. Maybe I'm out to lunch, which I probably am. I didn't know the chief executive of the United States, the commander-in-chief's orders were up for debate when given. But I guess they were in this case. I guess Christopher Miller decided that was not a good idea. Did he ever go back to the president and say, sir, I don't think that's a good idea? I wonder. Miller said officials instead used an interagency process to devise an alternative plan that would put some D.C. National Guard troops on the ground in the nation's capital to direct traffic, but not to guard the Capitol, a plan that District of Columbia Mayor Muriel Bowser suggested. Another phony who gets off in this totally scot-free, who takes no blame whatsoever, just blames Trump. Quote, the operational plan was this. Let's take the D.C. National Guard, keep them away from the Capitol. Brilliant. Let's put the request. It wasn't my request, Bowser and her Metropolitan Police Department were like, let's put D.C. National Guard on traffic control points and at the metro stations to free up credentialed law enforcement officers that can go out and arrest people. Miller admitted there was a political calculus to his decision not to deploy troops near the Capitol ahead of time for preventative security. So here's Trump, gives very specific orders, meets with these people, tells them exactly what he wants. They basically turn their back when he leaves, gives them the middle finger, says, we'll do it our way. And then as soon as shit goes hellwire, they turn and say, well, it's his fault. Think about that. Think about that. And for 3.5 years, we've had to hear about how he let this happen. Because they're worried about the optics politically. I hate to use the word optics because it's been used and so prejudicially negative. It wasn't the optics. It was like there would have been a huge political consequences that because that's what I got paid to do. I don't know who this person is quoted, but they can't even speak English. I had the factor in the politics of this. And that was my concern, is the situation does not warrant at this time U.S. military forces, he explained. I don't know who that is. Maybe that's Miller. But anyways, you get the idea here. Bombshell by John Solomon. Pentagon refused to assist D.C. police. Loudermilk said he is deeply concerned the Pentagon officials substituted their own personnel politics for the president's instructions. Exactly right. Since when is the chief executive, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, when are those orders become optional? I feel like I'm watching a Few Good Men. Tom Cruise questioning Jack Nicholson. Your orders are always followed. You want me to read it back to you? No, I know what I said. When are the president's orders questionable, whether you want to follow them or not? We follow orders or people die. Wasn't that the quote? Seems pretty. President Trump directed senior DOD leaders to ensure events on January 6th would be safe. They ignored his guidance, prioritized optics concerns over security, and pushed a flawed narrative in their IG report. He wrote on X, "The American people deserve the full truth." Well, yeah, the American people always deserve the full truth, but the problem is we always get the damn full truth after it's too late and everybody's taking the incoming and the damage, and where do you get your reputation back, and where do you get your presidency back, and where do you get your second term back, and where do you get all this back? That's the problem. Eventually, the Pentagon approved less than 400 D.C. Guard troops to be used on traffic control. But documents gathered by Loudermilk's team show the D.C. Guard was told directly by McCarthy it could not use weapons or engage with protesters, a limitation that became magnified when violence broke out. So you can read the rest of this over at Just the News. I also have it shared on our X, but really just really unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable when you look back at what we've heard about this for 4 years. And really this day should have been a non-event if President Trump's orders were followed, if Pelosi did her job, if McConnell did his job, and everybody listened to what the president knew was going on. And if Stephen Sund was kept in the loop and his guys had the right equipment and everybody was on the same page, this would have been a nothing event other than a speech and maybe a couple knuckleheads that maybe would have gotten arrested, but nothing like what we ended up seeing. So again, over at Just the News, you can see it on our website as well. All right, let's go over to see what you guys are talking about here. Go back a little bit. Pelosi did not comply. Well, Pelosi, I mean, you won't convince me that she didn't have some idea of what this day could be, and she did everything she could to make sure it happened that way. Yeah, exactly. Whether you want to use the word orchestrate or not, but you won't convince me that they didn't have some idea. You know, when you operate from the standpoint of, again, how do we get them? How can we get them? You look at everything and you say, well, is there anything here we can use to get him? Is there anything we can do here that works against him? You know, and that's the way they operated. Yeah. Yeah, think about her in that video. She's walking out all of a sudden. We should have had this. We should have had that. She knew, as the Speaker of the House, she absolutely knew what his wishes were. Whether she was in the room and heard it directly from him or not, she heard it from somebody. There's no doubt. Drag Blacker, good morning. All right. Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. What's going on, Gary? Welcome on in. Glad you're here. Hi, Carol. Thanks. How are you? Well, it's also an example of why they're so worried about a Trump return to office. I think Trump would be a much more prudent and what would be the word? I think he would slice and dice a little more with the deep state a second term around, with no being that this would be the final run. I think they're very concerned about what a second Trump term with no nonsense, knowing where the scum lie, and there's a lot of it, especially what he's gone through and still continues to go through with these cases and the consistent internal let's go get them at all costs. When you're desperate to hang on to power the way these people are, the thought of him returning, guns blazing, knowing where all the bodies lie. And I have to say, as everybody knows, I don't hide it. My biggest complaint with President Trump's first term is personnel. And you see it with people who were close to him who are now over working at The View, people who were close to him that are now working over at these networks, at CNN, ABC, Alyssa Farha, and all of them. You can go down the list of all the people who started out in the administration that ended up leaving, writing books, whether it was our first Secretary of State there or whatever his name was, Rex Tillerson. My biggest complaint has always been like how Cassidy Hutchinson, you can go down the list of people and think how did these people end up there and then we see who they truly are. How do they vet these people? Well, I think the second time around there's going to be a lot of the people that we've come to know who have been out there defending the Kash Patels of the world, others, Rick Grinnell, Lee Zeldin. Not that you have to like every one of them, but I think he'll do a much better job in these 4 years, God willing he wins, I think personnel will be much different. I can't imagine, with the experience he has now and seeing where all the cards have fallen and all the chips have fallen over the years of who's what and where and who knows who, that he would be making any horrendous personnel decisions. Like some of the ones in the first four. So we'll see. All right, let's listen to a little bit of what's going on over here.
65% increase. Now, this fiscal year, according to Border Patrol, they've also encountered 100 immigrants on their terrorist watch list. That is just compared to 0 in 2019. Dana.
Brooke Taylor, what an incredible opportunity to get to see it firsthand. Thanks for bringing the story to us.
So Dan Brunner is a retired FBI special agent, now president of Brunner Sierra Group. And good morning to you, Dan. Thank you for your time. I want to show our viewers what we call the gotaways, the people unaccounted for. They just come across the border. And in fiscal year 21, you see where the numbers went way up. 387,000, 600,000.
You wonder why she doesn't want to take any questions or go to the border.
In fiscal year 2023. When we talk about these gangs, Look at the map here, where they cross the southern border and then they make their way to Denver, Chicago, New York, because they're looking for these migrant camps, especially in places like New York City. From what you just heard there, Dan, from Brooks reporting, what should we learn?
We should learn that we should be very concerned in this country. The migrant surge that's been coming across the southern border is extremely alarming. The growth of some of these transnational organized crime entities, such as Tren de Aragua, MS-13, they're moving their people across the border. Just a year ago, Tren de Aragua had a very small footprint in the United States. In just 1 year, they have moved a lot of their people across the border into the United States, crossing Mexico and from the northern border in Canada, and they have established themselves in locations where there are Venezuelan population groups.
Yeah, and a lot of it's here in New York. I saw an article in the New York Post yesterday talking about the footprint that they now have in some of the boroughs. I mean, making not even trying to hide it. And this is happening all over the country. And, well, there you go. I mean, just as I say it, they put it up, again, right from New York. New York's got a big problem. New York has many problems, but this is one that they really need to get on top of, because they are making big footprints in the boroughs of New York, into New York City, certain parts, and it's happening other places around the country as well. And of course, you know, I mean, the real scandal, I mean, amongst many, is the fact. Could we ever have imagined? Let's just stop and think for a second. Could we ever have imagined a time? I said this the other day. Just proves that the deep state rolls on no matter what. I mean, we literally do not have a president of the United States. We literally do not have a president of the United States. He might as well be comatose at this point. I think he probably is. The one or two times every couple weeks we see him, he gets in front of a microphone. He has no idea what he's doing. He's with the prime minister of, or whoever he was with the other day, Prime Minister Modi. He has no idea who he's supposed to introduce, no idea who he's even with. And then he vanishes and we don't see him for a week. We don't hear from him. We don't see from him for a week. And this is supposed to be accepted as the norm. But of course, if they acknowledge it, Kamala Harris finds herself in a position where then she cannot let it, she could not invoke the 25th Amendment. And then she's tied back to the hip to him. And then she's in charge of this whole mess, even for 4 months or whatever it is. But the idea that this is normal and we should just accept this as okay is really crazy. Well, let's hear they talk about this guy.
The golf club. What we now know about Ryan Ruth's alleged plan after his court appearance. Plus, Congress targeting high prescription.
Okay, well, I got a little something. Oh, we got a couple things on Ryan Ruth we can talk about. But in any other time, this would be the biggest political scandal in the history of the country. The current state of the U.S. president, which again, I think is comatose. His wife leads the cabinet meeting last week. Who in the hell, as a matter of fact, I think that was the title. I probably should have looked at this. Yeah. Miranda Devine today in the New York Post. Who exactly is running the country? Certainly appears to be Jill Biden and not Joe. And she says, you know, let's remember that we still have this guy as president for 4 months. And that's a scary prospect considering his obvious cognitive decline. He has spent almost half his presidency goofing off and being shielded from scrutiny, but the situation is getting rapidly worse. The fate of the free world should not be left in the hands of a man who can't remember where he is or what he's meant to be doing at any given moment. And she quotes exactly what I was talking about. On Saturday, for instance, he made the prime ministers of India, Japan, and Australia schlep to Wilmington, Delaware for an annual meeting of the Quad, a partnership designed to keep increasingly aggressive China in check. In public remarks live streamed by the White House, he forgot who he was supposed to introduce, Indian Prime Minister Modi. Who am I introducing next, he said. And then he gets angry after that. He says, who's next? And then she goes on to talk about Dr. Jill obviously being in charge. But, and again, in any normal time, this is absolutely the biggest scandal in American politics we've ever seen. But with today, it barely registers. It barely registers any conversation on any of these shows, on anything. It's all Trump 24/7. Kamala, of course, tries to keep herself away from Biden. She doesn't want to invoke the 25th because then she's in charge of this mess, and all of this is tied to her, which is tied to her anyways. Or at least in our eyes, not in the media's eyes, of course. But it's absolutely crazy what we're seeing from the U.S. president. What do you think of this headline? Explain this one. I saw this and I said, excuse me? What are we doing? U.S. lawmakers plan for possible mass casualty event, proposing a constitutional amendment. A bipartisan group of 4 House members is advocating for a constitutional amendment allowing for the quick replacement of Congress members in the event of a mass casualty attack. Now, maybe we'd like to reach out to the offices, maybe I'll have Aaron and Fran do this today, of Representative Derek Kilmer, from Democrat from Washington, Brad Wenstrup, Republican from Ohio, Bill Timmons, Republican from South Carolina, and Emmanuel Cleaver, Democrat from Missouri, put forth a proposal to ensure that Congress can continue its work if a large number of members are killed in a mass attack. Now, so can anybody have any idea what possibly would be getting these 4 motivated to have to deal with this? This proposal aims to ensure continuous representation and prevent violence from shifting political power. And prevent violence from shifting political power. We've seen a 300% increase in threats against members over the last 7 years, Representative Kilmer said. The amendment would require House members to provide a list of potential replacements to their state's governor. Filling vacancies quickly would help maintain stability and deter political violence. Well, I don't know how it would deter political violence, but I mean, do they think someone's thinking, oh, geez, I should really go after? Oh, maybe not. They'll replace him pretty quickly. I mean, what the hell are they talking about? However, passing such an amendment is challenging due to the need for 2/3 congressional vote and state ratification. Richard Primus, a constitutional law professor at the University of Michigan, suggested lawmakers should also consider changing the Presidential Succession Act, which includes the Speaker of the House and the President pro tem of the Senate in line of succession. So I don't know what the hell's going on here, or why possibly this is something to be on the radar, but certainly catches your attention, that headline. Let's look at some of the comments. I'll bet the comments will win here. Oh, I get it. They're planning to stage a massive insurrection after they steal the election in a very open and obvious way, and this time they won't make the mistake of being unarmed. They're going to bomb the Capitol themselves. This time the pipe bombs will go off, okay? There's no greater threat to Americans than the American government. That's an odd thing to randomly start preparing for so close to an election. We're getting nuked, aren't we? I don't know. They did the same thing right before 9/11. Why are lawmakers planning for such an event, and why would it be so likely to pass the amendment process? This is rather concerning. They're planning to do this to Trump when he wins. These people know that if Donald Trump wins, he's going to collapse it on them. They're getting to something drastic and major right after the election to steal it from Trump. We are talking massive casualties. I mean, I think we got to be careful in our language. Yeah, well, so there you go.
Debate. But with artificial food dyes, they have shown all over the world that they can use colorants that come from fruit.
This is the Canadian version.
This is the brightness of the Canadian version, just for visibility. And this is the brightness of artificial food dyes. So, of course, Kellogg and other food companies will argue children prefer this over this, just as they would prefer cocaine over sugar. That doesn't make it okay.
But I think
My man's crashing on Fruit Loops. Come on, man. Can't be doing that. What the hell? Okay, let's see. We talked a little bit about that. We didn't really go through these, but we talked about it. This whole idea of this $150,000 bounty for someone to complete the job and how this gets out so quickly. Rasmussen has a good piece on this today. I'll share it on our social media. Daniel McCarthy goes through a little bit of his thoughts on what we're seeing here. So Rasmussen, and over here in the Washington Times, has a couple good pieces. I'll share all of this on our X. And that's really about it this morning that I've seen.
Soleimani in an airstrike in 2020. The protesters here told us it is the Iran regime that must end.
We are here to
Biden
denounce
addressed the UN.
Pezeshkian. We are
How the hell's he
here,
going to do that?
To say that
AI?
he's not Iranian representative.
He's gonna talk to
they
the
are
UN.
part of a tyrant regime, and they must go. They by changing regime in Iran.
What's going on here?
So -3 is definitely a big improvement, but it's still 31
Dollar
negatives
back down to
in a
100,
row.
probably
31
gonna break
negatives in a
100
row
here.
on service sector with respect to Richmond Fed. So we are looking at yields moving a bit lower on the long end. And do keep in mind, the long end is on pace for its fourth consecutive higher yield close in a row. Every close since last Wednesday's 50 basis point cut by the Federal Reserve. Sarah, back to you.
Okay, Rick Santelli. Rick, thank you very much. Adding that weaker consumer confidence into the mix today. The big story, though, is China, and that's what moved things overnight. The Chinese stock market went up 4%. China-related names
weaker
of
consumer
American
confidence
companies
is
that
not
do
a
business.
surprise. We've been talking about the consumer for a long time. People make out the consumer to be much stronger than I think they probably are and have been.
in that key Hezbollah stronghold of southern Beirut. So look, the US administration will continue to press both sides to come back down, to try and dial it down, to try and keep moving towards some kind of solution on the northern border between Israel and Lebanon, where Hezbollah might move back and, you know, find some kind of solution that could be acceptable to both sides. But look, US diplomacy can influence the situation, but within the last 24, 48 hours, we've seen military strategy, military escalation really dictate the rules, and ultimately this will be decided by the thinking, both from the Israeli leadership.
Yeah, whatever.
If she would come on this show, and just like you do, and hopefully President Trump's going to come on, but former President Trump, if she would come on, we could get answers to a lot of these things. And I'm just wondering, as a surrogate that advises the campaign, there is an effort to rope-a-dope this thing right to the election, in my view. And the other side's done 40 or 50 interviews with J.D. Vance. I think I don't have to take my shoes off to count on my fingers and toes how many interviews that she's done along with Governor Walz. And that looks like a deliberate effort, just not to face the hard questions and to try to, I don't know, I think Americans might finally say, I don't like the way this is working. I want to know. I think Andrew was getting at that in another way, that we would like to know something. We'd like to see questions asked and answers provided for all these things. And we may never get that. We only got 40 days left.
We just had Vice President Harris say, yes, let's do another presidential debate. And Donald Trump say no. And you have to agree that a nationally televised hour-long debate is one way to answer a lot of direct questions.
So is just sitting down with an interview with anyone.
And one of the concerns I've heard, I'm here in New York for the UN General Assembly. I've met with heads of state from South America, from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, foreign ministers, defense ministers, heads of state. All of them have questions about the reliability of the United States and our relationships with core allies. That's one of the key factors I also hope voters will take into account, is that Donald Trump promised he would be an unconventional president, and he overperformed.
But the answer is she's too busy? That should be in a stack list. I got to learn how to use the term stack list. That would be number one for my stack list, is to be transparent and open about what my plans are if I'm elected president.
Yeah, Joe Kernan is one out there who will not take any nonsense answers as answers. I mean, Chris Coons. I mean, who is he kidding? I mean, seriously, who is he kidding? We talked a little bit about this yesterday. I think that I really hope I'm wrong, but this North Carolina mess is I think, just going to become a mess. It's too late for Mark Robinson to get out. And unfortunately, again, here's one of those situations, kind of like January 6th and President Trump. It almost doesn't matter at this point where the truth lies, because Mark Robinson said yesterday he's going to go after CNN, but will he be able to do anything quick enough to prove that this story doesn't have legs? And I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know the answer to is President Trump needs to win North Carolina. North Carolina mails its domestic absentee ballots today. Roughly 190,000 of them are on the way. We're now starting to get returns from the state. The first couple of batches will be UOCAVA returns only. These ballots generally break 4-1 Democrat when the votes are tallied. International citizens vote like Philadelphia. Absentee requests are picking up just a bit of speed, but NC is putting most of its eggs in the 17-day early vote window, which starts October 17th. And again, I hope if Mark Robinson has any legs to his story, he gets it out there quickly. Because the last thing we want to be doing is fighting for our lives in North Carolina because of him. And it's unfortunate that the problem is we don't have time to figure out where the truth lies in this thing, as absurd as the whole thing seems to me. And of course, this is always part of the plan. Drop these things where there's no time. Anthony Blinken no-shows House hearing with him a sole witness on Afghanistan withdrawal. Sends a letter instead, of course. Yeah, I actually saw Ron Filipkowski here. I'm reasonably sure that's a federal crime. Trump giving $100 to a lady to pay for her groceries. That's all they could figure out of it. It's a federal crime. Miranda Devine reporting on what we just talked about from John Solomon's Just the News, bombshell transcripts on Trump on January 6th. Again, now the truth comes out, but of course the damage is done. How about Elon yesterday meeting President Milei in a Make America Great Again black hat? Elon is certainly all in.
Congress, who were then deliberating whether to provide the tens of billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine that the White House had requested. That ended up happening 6 months later, and that really incited some worry within the administration that if there is a need for more aid, as there is expected to be, that it would be very hard pressed to actually get that support from Capitol Hill. So look for that Washington visit where Zelensky will be meeting with both Biden, but as well as Vice President Kamala Harris, who could potentially assume the reins of the Democratic foreign policy if she wins in November. Certainly, that could change the game as well for those discussions. But I think Thursday is really key there, Jim.
Yeah, I was just talking with the British Foreign Secretary,
All right, folks.
David Lammy.
I think that's about it for today. Anything? I'll get over to your comments here before we wrap it up. Elon should get the Medal of Honor. I think Elon would be happy just having some, if he could get a hand on some kind of a fiscal sanity returning to government. I think he'd be happy with that. So, Real Prince Dow, what's going on? See you tonight. Yes, you will see me tonight, and I believe tonight should be a regular show. I don't think we have any. Someone in the chat said Trump was speaking where they live. Forget who it was. But if that is, I'm assuming it's during the day today because I don't think there's anything we're covering at night. I think we have a pretty much regular show tonight. So, but you never know. It's going to be a wild 40 days for everybody. So we're just going to roll with the punches. What even is that? I don't know. I got to talk to Rick. I'll probably talk to him after I get done here. Maybe we'll do it tonight, or maybe we'll hold it. We're supposed to do it Friday. Maybe we'll hold it till this Friday so he doesn't have to write another one. I don't know. We'll see. But you'll definitely have a What Even Is That this week. It will definitely not be Thursday because Thursday, I believe the network is covering RFK Jr., who is now doing a town hall with our own Steve Gruber, I believe, on Thursday night. So I think the network will be covering that on Thursday. So again, everybody's just going to we're going to just roll with it. And if we can be on socials, if we're not on the network, we'll try to do that where we can. If we're on the network, that's great. So, when you're in that 8 to 10 spot, obviously a lot of things happen. So just going to have patience. We'll try to be somewhere where you can find us. And that's the way it's going to go until this election, until November 5th. So we're in the home stretch here. All right, everybody. As always, please smash the like, subscribe to the channel, share, comment. Any engagement you can give us on our social medias really helps. We appreciate it as the numbers continue slowly go up, but we want them to keep going. 15,000 on YouTube. We want to see that push to 20, and then 25, and then 50, then 100,000, and then 1 million. It's going to take some time, but if you share it with friends, tell them to subscribe. We can keep getting the word out there as we head towards November 5th. Head over to livefromstudio6b.com, of course, and all of this is brought to you by MyPillow. LFS6B is the promo code to use if you shop at MyPillow as you start to get ready to shopping as we head into almost the end of September now. It's going quick. October, November, December, last quarter of the year is coming up as we head into the holiday season. Anytime you can use LFS6B, we appreciate when you do it. Great way to support Mike Lindell and great stuff from him. Great way to support our show. which we always can use. And we do appreciate it. So thanks for joining me this morning. I think Vinnie Mac's going to join me one morning this week. He's actually in Washington, D.C. for the UN meetings as well right now, covering them. So he's going to join us from there. I'm not sure what morning, but he'll join me here coming up. And then I'll see you tonight. Tonight and tomorrow should be 2 regular shows. Thursday we'll be covering the Gruber RFK Jr. Town Hall. And then Friday we're back, obviously, with a regular show on Friday night, I believe. But don't hold me to it because things change by the hour. So, all right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you tonight, 8 p.m. Real America's Voice. We'll see you then.